Book 5, Salem, Safety Assured, Leaving East of Medicetti. Chapter 18. You have a family? Later that afternoon, after the shock of the family connections wore down to merely an astonishing reverberation, Pato got directions from Judith on how to find Rector Young's house. He hadn't had time to talk to him the day before, too overwhelmed with visitors and food, but he had a suspicion that Young knew where he could find peach pits. Besides, Pato hadn't visited the lonely widower, and after so many weeks he figured Young would appreciate a visitor. All right, Pato knew he had to be more honest than that in Salem. His frequent visits before to Young hadn't been about checking on the old man, but using him as a grandfather who could help Pato sort his thoughts. Pato needed more sorting, and hoped Young wouldn't mind being bothered yet again. Young's place was less than 2 miles north of the Shins, and Pato wasn't sure if he had the right place when he saw the large house. Pato hesitated to approach until he saw a girl scamper from a nearby chicken coop. "Excuse me, but I'm looking for Rector Young." "You found him? Follow me." Disbelieving, Pato followed her to the side door. His mouth fell open when she called out, "Grandpa Great! Visitor!" "Grandpa Great?" Pato murmured as he saw a swirl of a dozen people, all ages, gathering around a large eating room table. It must have been a different Young. "Pato, my boy!" Rector Young, the familiar one, rushed over and caught him in a hug. "I was hoping for a chance to speak with you." Pato gestured, confused, to the crowd that was now watching and smiling at him. "Who are all these people?" "My family," Young announced. "That's my son, my daughter-in-law." Names were given, relationships stated, but Pato just stared at the people who were supposedly Rector Young's. "You have a family?" "Of course." "But Shem said you were a lonely old widower." "Well, yes, I've been lonely without my wife, and I am old." "You have a family." The rector's son chuckled and came over to shake Pato's hand. "Part of his cover story, no doubt, to make it sound as if he doesn't have 4 children, 23 grandchildren, and 41 great-grandchildren." Rector Young smiled. "And the first great-great is due shortly after Jatesie's baby." "You have a family!" Young's daughter-in-law, setting down the bread basket, said, "Not as if we've been able to keep him here, though. He's always been too adventurous. And when Shem and Guide Gleese came by a few years ago looking for someone to serve as rector in Edge, we were sure they were asking him for suggestions, not looking for a volunteer." How could I resist such a temptation? After I lost my dear wife. He gestured to a painting on the wall, and something caught in his throat. I needed something to do. Pato took a few steps closer to the surprisingly lifelike painting of a young Rector Young, black hair, narrow and gentle eyes, and his wife, blonde ponytail, fiery blue eyes. Pato glanced behind him at the various family members still watching him, and noticed the resemblances. A few had eyes like Young, combined with the fire of his wife. I just never realized, never imagined that," he started, but stopped, knowing his ignorance sounded stupid. Young's son, a larger man with the coloring of his father, chuckled. "Papa's always said he was good at covering his tracks, and apparently he's as good an undercover scout as the Corps claimed he was." Young waved that away, a bit embarrassed. "And what can I do for you, Pato?" And because he still knew how to be a rector, said to his son, "I feel like a little walk. Start supper without me." And he escorted Pato out of the house. "Rector, I didn't mean for you to miss your supper." "Not a problem," Young said easily as they wandered into the yard. "They'll try to force me to eat too much, then fawn on me too much, and we'll continue to be overly merry because afterward," his voice grew quieter, "after we planned the memorial for Dorman." "Oh, that's right," Pato mumbled. "Sorry about all of that. He was supposed to come for dinner, right?" "Supposed to stay the whole weekend," Young said, his gait slowing to a crawl. "He was supposed to tell your father all about his adventures." A few moments passed before he started again. "Dorman kept an open journal, which he freely shared. I suppose I could show that to Perrin, although it won't be the same." Pato didn't know what to say. Young had always been cheering Pato up, not the other way around. Sorry was all he could come up with. "It's all right," Young said. "As Asrar is fond of saying, it's all good. Dorman wouldn't have wanted to go any other way. He and my wife must be sharing so many stories right now." Young was smiling, but Pato, watching him askance, could see a tear trickle down his cheek. "Both of them were so good in the trees. I always got lost. I always needed one or both of them to see me through." Pato got the impression he was talking about something more besides the forest. They walked a few more slow steps, and Young muttered, in a barely audible whisper, "I envy them." Pato knew it'd be useless to say once more, "Sorry," so he just kept up the slow pace to wherever they were going. Eventually Young said, with forced cheeriness, "Well, now, you came to visit me for a reason. What can I do for you, son?" He stopped and turned to Pato, his ready grin as wide as ever, as if he easily shelved his own grief. Pato felt doubly stupid for what he was about to ask. I came for peach pits." "You didn't bring any from Edge?" "Was I supposed to?" "No," Young smiled. "Besides, we have far better varieties." He gestured around him. "Do you realize where we are?" Pato stopped abruptly. They were in an orchard. Was that even a big enough word? The scent of the blossoms hung heavy in the air, tickling his nose. Rows of carefully pruned trees went on for all directions, for acres. Young definitely knew his way around trees, if not around randomly planted forests. The old man reached up and caressed a white blossom, smiling in anticipation. "Apricots will be plentiful this year, as long as we don't have a late frost." Pato nodded, as if he knew what apricots were. Indicating a large shed on the edge of the orchard, Young said, "I have seeds and pits of all kinds, Pato. In our family, we have 30 acres of orchards. Tell me what you want. Cherries, pears, apples, apricots, plums, and certainly peaches. I also have walnuts, cashews, almonds." "No wonder you knew so much about trees and stuff," Pato managed, staring in awe. "Maybe I want to plant more than just 4 peach trees." "An orchard for yourself? Splendid idea. May I be so bold as to ask to help you?" Pato shrugged. "I really don't want to drag you away from your family, especially at a time like this." "Especially at a time like this?" Young said, gripping his arm and steering him to the shed. "I need a project. I ran away to Edge after I lost my wife. I freely admit that. But now they say I'm too old to do that again. And besides, they don't want rectors in the world. Pato, as an old friend, meaning that I'm an old man, so you better listen. I'm begging you. Please let me help you plant your own orchard." "But the land's huge, and we have rocks to clear and weeds to pull and holes to dig." "Sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Don't make me get on my knees to beg, Pato. It's getting harder to get back up. What do you say? Tomorrow night's the memorial, then the next day after school we get started?" Pato could see the pleading in his eyes. Not that he wanted to, but it would have been cruel to give him any other answer than, "Of course." Then he added, "Do you know where I can get a shovel?" Young pointed to his shed, which Pato soon discovered was full of carefully labeled boxes containing every kind of seed and pit found in Salem. You may have one of mine for now. I'll write you a list of supplies you'll need from the storehouse, and you can pick them up tomorrow when it's open again. Oh, Pato, we're going to have so much fun! If that's what you want to call it. Oh, by the way, Rector, tomorrow morning, we have something planned. As a family, that is, and I know that Father was planning to visit and invite you, but it was odd how difficult it was to get out the words. Wait, are you talking about a baptism already? Father wanted it today, but Guideglees told him to wait until tomorrow. Why, that's wonderful! Young exclaimed. Of course, I suspected your family would be one of those quick to take the plunge, figuratively and literally, that is, but I wouldn't miss it for anything. Before the memorial, I'm assuming? Yes, I think that's the plan. And who all is being baptized? Pato hesitated. Father had told him to be back by the evening when their rector would be over with Shem to discuss the baptism, but until that moment, Pato hadn't thought too much more about joining his family in a public river bath. Now the thought of not doing it struck him as cold and empty, and when he said the words, his chest swelled with happy heat. All of us. By the way, I have something interesting to tell you about Shem's family and ours. When Pato returned home with a list from Rector Young as to what he would need to request from the storehouse for his new orchard, he found his family and Shem sitting on the sofas, chatting. Are you waiting for the rector to discuss tomorrow's baptism? Not yet, Perrin said. Apparently there's yet another new development, and Judith and Notch are trying to bring over Boscos to explain it. Explain what? Pato wondered. Shem shrugged. For once, I don't know anything about this. I went home with Judith. We told Papa that we're all family. He looked at the family lines and started sobbing. He sent me over here and said he'd be over to explain. Not very fun being left out of everything, is it? Perrin said. How many more times do I need to apologize for keeping you in the dark about things? About 17 more years worth, I'm guessing. Boys, Mari exhaled. Enough, honestly, you're acting like teenagers. I don't need any more of those. The men chuckled at Pato's insulted expression, and the front door opened again. There stood Boscos Zenas, puffy-eyed, his daughter Judith on one side, and his son-in-law Notch holding him up on the other. Look at all of you, he blubbered. Our family. Oh dear, Judith sighed, gently leading him into the house. He's already started again. They sat him in the stuffed chair, and Notch handed him a fresh handkerchief. Deep breaths, Boscos. Remember, deep breaths, Notch told him. Slower, very good. I think you can start now. Is he all right? Mari worried. Oh, this is quite normal for Papa, Shem said, but his brow was furrowed in worry. Boscos blew his nose loudly and said, Shem, what you told me about the shins took me by surprise, all the way back to when your mother was expecting you. You were our 7th child, and we were thinking of names for another girl, obviously. One night, Miki woke me up with the words, Boss, I know what his name should be. And I said, His who? And she said, his chin began to wobble again. She said, our son. Notch knelt beside him as his eyes bubbled over again. You can do it, Boscos. That was good. Just keep the words flowing. Judith was already heading to the kitchen to get him a mug of water. To the family waiting anxiously on the sofas, Notch said, We practice this at home. It's going quite well, he assured them. Boscos gulped down the water Judith brought him, wiped his face, and said, "She had a feeling, or maybe a dream, I don't recall. But she said this baby was a boy, and he needed a special name, a family name." Wobble, wobble. "Breathe, Boscos, breathe, and keep going." "And she said it should be Shin." "What?" Shem exclaimed. No one else could speak. I know, Boscos cried. "That's not one of our family names. That's what I told her. Oh, I did not want that name. You know whose name that was. The High General of Idemia, that's who." Wringing his hands in despair, he continued, "I never argued with Miki. Oh, never. She was just too perfect a woman. But we argued that night. Oh, did we? Why name our boy after the generals in the world? What a terrible thing to do. She insisted, and I insisted, and, well, I won." He looked up wretchedly at his son. "I told her we should change a few letters so it wouldn't be such an unusual name. I suggested that the first two letters could be from Shin, and then use the last two letters from Salem. Put together, it's Shem." Jatsi smiled. "Why, that's rather clever, using the name of Salem. What a nice pairing." But Boscos still looked miserable. "Oh, I wasn't trying to be meaningful or anything. I just really did not want to have to say the word Shin every day." To Perrin he said, "You understand, right? Things were different back then, and—" "Of course," said Perrin genially. But now that the words were flowing, Boscos couldn't hold them back. "And then I tried to forget about all of that, and I did. For many years, I really did forget, son, that she wanted your name to be their name, until today. I'm so sorry, because I now see why. Shin was a family name. I need to sit." Judith was already bringing another mug of water, and Notch patted him on the back. "You are sitting, Boscos. Good job." To the stunned family on the sofas, he said, "I thought this would take a lot longer. At least he's not hyperventilating anymore. Oh, wait, spoke too soon." "I should have been named," Shem paused, "Shin?" Perrin cleared his throat. "Mr. Zenas, Boscos, may I thank you for not naming him Shin? It was confusing enough at times for his first name to be so close to my last name. Had you not prevailed against your dear wife, life at the fort would have been far more complicated for all of us." "I should have been named Shin? So I did the right thing?" Boscos said, between gasps. "Yes, sir," Perrin grinned. "The absolutely right thing." "I should have been named Shin." "Shem," Judith said, "I think you're missing the point. Think about this. Over 38 years ago, Mama knew. She knew who were the missing vines in her family, and even knew their family name. She also knew you would be the one to retrieve them." "Oh, how I wish I could have met your mother," Mari breathed. "She must have been something." "She was, as Papa said, a most perfect woman," Judith told her. "I guess it's a good thing I wrote down those names of Lek and Lorexania legibly, isn't it?" Pato chuckled. "Pato, I just came up with a theory," Judith squealed. "What if it was my mother who influenced your grandfather to find that file, then told you to write down those names so that we could have them today? To complete this massive circle of, I don't know what yet, but to make sure that we all know what we know now." Hey, I like that. "I'm sorry, Mama," Shem announced loudly, "but naming me Shin?" Perrin chuckled quietly. Oh, honestly, Shem, Judith put her hands on her waist. Can you just get over that and see the bigger story here? But it's so weird. Everything I knew, my identity, Mama saw me as someone different in a way. It all feels so sideways somehow, like I don't quite know myself, and it's very disconcerting. And there it is, Perrin announced and clapped his hands. He stood up and pumped Bosco's hand vigorously. Thank you, Mr. Zenas, so very much. And Mama Zenas, he looked up to the ceiling. Her name was Miki, Boscos offered uncertainly. Miki Zenas, thank you very much as well, Perrin called, because now you, and he spun to point at Shem, know a little bit of what I've been going through for the past several days. Disconcerting? Who you think you are, completely shaken up? Do you get it now? Do you? Shem blinked up at him. All right, he said slowly, but I don't think this is the same thing. Oh, I completely agree. This is still only a small bit compared to what you've been putting me through. Seeing things sideways? I'd have to stop spinning first to see things only sideways, Shem. Or should I say, Shin? Everyone chuckled as Shem glared at Perrin. But his glare soon softened, and he said, So does this make us even yet? Perrin bobbed his head. No, but it's getting there, Shin. Please don't call me that. Why not? It's what your mother wanted. Shem fidgeted and hesitated. Because that's you. Because I'm not you. I could never hope to be. Because it feels like taking an honor that doesn't belong to me. Perrin sat down slowly. You just had to spoil my glee, didn't you? Shem smiled weakly. However, I must say I was never quite sure of my name before, where it came from, why no one else was named that. But today, suddenly, I really appreciate it. In a way, my name has always been my calling. So, Mari said, Boscos really did get it right by putting Shin in Salem for your name. He was as inspired as your mother. He just didn't know it. Boscos burst out in a new round of sobbing. He didn't have the strength to go back home for another hour. And that's the end of that chapter. Thank you.